Our early stages, we pretty much had to rewrite the whole product over, and it did slow us down for probably half a year, because basically in the beginning, we're so busy getting the value out to users. We should have focused more on what is the actual technologies that would scale, right? And things like that. But as I mentioned, the first version was in Drupal, just because we're like, oh, okay, we can build it right now this week. Let's do it. That was a little painful. My name is Kateryna Sytnyk, a co-founder and CTO at Fract. And now I'm founder and CEO at CTO Doctor, helping women empower build technical products.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Laphart, and today how Kateryna Sytnyk created the platform to help you create successful territories and then became the doctor of CTOs. All this and more on Code Story. Kateryna Sytnyk is originally from Ukraine, but moved to the States 15 years ago after winning the green card lottery. Her background is in applied mathematics, and she grew up surrounded with logical brains. For example, her grandparent was literally a rocket scientist. When she moved to the US, she dove right into the world of entrepreneurship. But outside of tech, she travels a lot, being a digital nomad, and likes to salsa dance. She's fascinated with psychology and what drives behavior. For her prior startup, she utilized her background in applied math combined with her co-founder's experience in the space to create a way to optimize territory creation for franchises, sales teams, etc., and predict revenue for said territories. When she moved on from that gig, she started a new thing, one that would enable women founders to build technical solutions. This is the creation story of Fract and CTO Doctor.
So the product is based on Geospatial AI, and basically it's helping brands figure out where in the physical world is best to target their customer. So it's like this blend of online and offline. So as an example, it would be, for example, what's the best definition of a franchise territory or a marketing territory? Literally, what's a set of zip codes to target? It's a lot of math involved, and how I did get started because my background is in applied math, and my co-founder spent 20 years in market research and doing all this for real brands. So when we got together, we really thought there was something there to get it to the next level. So that's the product, is basically predicting the revenue and using a whole bunch of AI focused on geospatial. So recently I started CTO Doctor, the mission of which is empower women entrepreneurs build technical products. In that capacity, we build out MVPs, and I act as a fractional CTO. So basically, think of it as a bridge for super early stage startup, 0 to 1, probably seed to Series A, that do not have technical co-founder. So I bridge that gap, and if certain women cannot find technical co-founder, which they should try at least, but I still don't want to stop them at that point and provide this gap till they get to a Series A where they can get the full internal team and go from there.
Let's dive into the MVP for Fract. Tell me about that MVP, that first product you built. How long did it take you to build, and what sort of tools did you use to bring it to life?
It was actually pretty painful story because, on one side, right, we did what every startup needs to do, is that we got something as fast as possible out to the customers. Maybe that would be one of the illustrations of mistakes we also did and things I'm watching out now, having all this experience with all the startups I'm working with. Because we originally built it on Drupal, which was not even the best tool for the job. Our team was strong in Drupal based on a few other projects we had before. We got it to a certain point where we realized that it's not the best fit for the job. At some point, we even had to rework the whole system. We're using Node.js and MongoDB, Vue.js and JavaScript on the front end. But yeah, original MVP was basically just to get something out as fast as possible, which we did, and we had real brands using it. So that was success, but it was painful from a technical side because we almost had to start over.
Keeping on that MVP for a minute, when you're building an MVP, you got to make certain decisions and trade-offs in the early days around, it could be feature cut, scope, narrowing, that's kind of what I'm going for, or technical debt. So tell me about some of those decisions and trade-offs that you had to make in more detail and how you coped with them.
So for us, it's B2B, and it was a lot of companies who would ask different things, right? So it's a big challenge to, I guess it's more on the product side and keeping the whole backlog pretty focused. So it's pretty challenging to identify what features would make sense to build for all those brands that we've been working with. That would be the intersection of those needs, right? But yeah, the MVP, I guess some of the trade-offs were that in the beginning, we manually would even upload some of the files, right? So we were focusing on the end user experience and providing results for people who actually log in and use the product for the ease of that. And some of the trade-offs is that we even had to do some manual work in the beginning because the whole infrastructure for processing all the Excel files, because it's super data heavy, right? Building the import, export, all that automation. So that was some of the trade-offs we had to do and do certain things manually in the beginning.
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted VCSOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's vanta.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com. Okay, so from that point then, how did you progress the product and mature it? And to put that in a box, what I'm really looking for is how you built your roadmap and how you went about deciding, okay, this is the next most important thing to build.
Some of the things was actually us having a gigantic Excel spreadsheet, which then after that we put a little bit more in the software for managing it. But in the beginning, it was a lot of calls, to be honest. It was just being on the sales calls with customers and figuring out what would make their life easier. And then we would rate them, right? So we would estimate with the team more kind of in Fibonacci points, similar how we would run Scrum, would estimate the complexity of the features and also would estimate the value add, right? So that would be more on the customer side. would make a list of features and then rate them, and then based on that figure out, okay, here's what we can accomplish in the next few months, and then split it into sprints and go from there. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It also, right, like it depends on the whole direction of the product, like where you see like, okay, we have one big customer and we can spend a little bit more time focusing on their needs versus having a lot of SMBs with needs that might not repeat. So it's kind of pros and cons.
Okay, how did you go about building your team? And what did you look for in those people to indicate that they were the winning horses to join you?
The team is super important. I am a big believer in empowering the team to almost make decisions for the product, right? So one of the things that I'm looking for in early stage startups is somebody who can take ownership at the end of the day. Because, you know, as we're all busy wearing multiple hats and you know, you always need something launched yesterday, right? The least thing you need is also have the whole complexity of micromanaging people, right? Plus, nobody wants to be micromanaged at the end of the day. The biggest thing is taking ownership, both in terms of technology and the product. So I would be looking for people to take initiative and actually be like, hey, based on all the features we built, here's another thing that the customer might like. And what's amazing, I'm focusing on this intersection of, sure, it needs to be very technical savvy person, but if they can understand also the end user problem, that's where the magic happens. Because it doesn't matter how, you know, technical the founders are or how much you know the product. I feel like a lot of times only people who are actually deep into coding and coding the feature, they would know that, hey, we can just spend a few extra hours. We can turn this feature in a completely different feature. We can reuse it, right? And again, right, like this is assuming a person obviously knows everything about technology, what they need to know to actually do their job, right? Part of for me is also just no ego involved in terms of the communication. A lot of times it slows down the process a lot. So if you would have somebody who, for example, you have a pull request, right? And if a person cannot take a feedback, right, and take it personally or things like that, right? Like it just slows down the process or wouldn't go out of the way to help another team member. So I would say the communication part, the team playing, and be strategic, taking ownership about the product on top of obviously technical skills. That's the most important things I'm looking for.
So with Fract, did you build this to scale efficiently from day one, or were you fighting this as you grew?
I wish I can answer that it was perfect from day one, right? As everybody would like to, but of course not. There are different parts of scaling, right? So I think certain parts have to be from day one, separating parts of code in different modules, right? So that you don't end up with spaghetti code and you can easily replace some parts of code with other parts, right? Or some backend provider with another backend provider, right? So I feel like that structure we did have from day one. In terms of scalability of just having a lot of users using it, right? Or a lot of requests going on. Of course, that's more ongoing process, and that was ongoing process for us. Also implementing all the testing and just having a stable product in general. That took a lot of time to have the whole CI/CD set up and all the testing, so that it's just one press of a button and things get deployed. So that took some time to set up, and that definitely wasn't there from day one because we're focusing on getting the value to the customers and getting the features out. I think it's a fine balance in the startup world on how do you make it scalable, that you can scale the product itself, but at the same time you don't spend too much time in the beginning on making it perfect and get the value to customers as fast as possible.
So as you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built, what are you most proud of? And I'd be curious, that from a Fract standpoint and from a CTO doctor standpoint.
I think from Frac specifically standpoint, I was proud of hiding very complex features behind very simple interface, right? So we were trying to get it to a point where it's almost like talking to a human being. It would be an actionable insight provided to a person making decisions, but it would be in a very, very simplistic manner saying, for example, like, hey, it seems like if you have, let's say, eyelash extension store, we found that it matters that if you place it in the area where there are high sales of bodywork services, for example. So it would read as a sentence, but behind it would be all these complicated models of processing tons of data on the regular basis, almost near real time, and having all these algorithms and super amazing complexity, but at the end of the day, it would be simple, right? On CTO Doctor, one of the things that I'm working on right now, and I think I'm proud of the process and what I'm coming up with, is kind of building the process, right? Because I think one of the things I see all the time in the early stage startups is everybody just keeps reinventing the wheel in terms of just doing the tech team operation system. So setting that up in the very beginning, right? From how developers communicate to the process to how do you set up GitHub and how the things flow. So one of the things I am proud of what I'm working right now is kind of setting them up as a standalone product, I would even say, right? So that as I implement it with more startups, they don't have to start over and reinvent the wheel and repeat the same mistakes I've had over the years.
Well, okay, let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it. I think specifically with Fract on this one.
I can go back to our early stages where, we pretty much had to rewrite the whole product over. And it did slow us down for probably half a year because we basically in the beginning, we're so busy getting the value out to users. We should have focused more on what is the actual technologies that would scale, right? And things like that. But as I mentioned, the first version was in Drupal just because we're like, oh, okay, we can build it right now this week. Let's do it. That was a little painful to go through. But yeah, I think one of the things I learned in the process is also how to communicate that to the team, because how do you keep the team rewriting things from scratch, more or less, but not having anybody discouraged, right? And having the whole initiative be about, hey, at the end of the day, it's about the company, the product, and about making it better and scalable and all that. But yeah, it's definitely a communication thing, and I'm very big now on making sure that everybody understands that things need to be scalable from day one, not only in terms of modules, but also technologies, right?
So I know you've moved on from Fract and you're focusing on CTO Doctor now. What does the future look like for what you offer and for how you're going to go about building that business?
For CTO Doctor, the vision is basically empower as many women to build technical products in the early stage as possible. And one of the problems is that women traditionally don't have as much access to just technology scene. They might not have as many connections. So when it comes to finding a technical co-founder, I find that a lot of them struggle. My mission is to make sure that doesn't stop them from creating amazing companies, right? So the vision is to be that bridge from 0 to 1 where they can get the internal team and basically cover that need if they do not have a technical co-founder to get them from 0 to a pretty stable place and scale from there.
So let's flip to you, Kateryna. So who influences the way that you work? Name a person you look up to, or many persons, or something that you look up to, and why.
So few people, I guess if I had to name few names that influenced me. For example, Jason Fried is one of people that I admire and I definitely look up to. One of the latest books, for example, that I'm listening to is written by him, and it's called, for example, It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work, right? So, which a motto I live by recently. Other people that influence me, for example, is Tim Ferriss, right, with the whole approach of delegation and building systems versus just doing work, right? So that definitely changed a lot for me day to day, because even in startups or technology world, I would rather take time and a little bit more time and build a system that scales, whether it's a technology product or actually the whole process of the flow. And in general, it's a lot of, as I mentioned before, just psychology and neuroscience and working with beliefs versus the actions. I found that it's much more effective.
We talked about a mistake earlier, but a little bit different spin. And this could be with Fract or CTO Doctor. If you could go back to the beginning, what would you do different? Or where would you consider taking a different approach?
One of the big things that I wish I could have told myself when I'm looking back is literally to take more breaks. For years, I've been working nonstop, and the whole Silicon Valley vibe of, you go-getter and high achiever and all that, right? But I found that ironically, when you actually step back and take a break and do nothing, seemingly you do nothing, right? But then when you come back to your project, it's incredible. So if I had to have one thing to advise to anybody else, including myself in the past, it would be, hey, just disconnect, take a break, go to nature, and then you see the magic unfold. So that probably would be number one. But then building the product is about not putting more work, but building the system around it, and just instead of adding things, thinking what things can you remove, right? So the whole 80-20% rule. So yeah, there would be a few things that I can think of right now.
Well, last question, Kateryna. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world and can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit?
If I were sitting next to the next tech entrepreneur, I think my advice would be to start with why, because it's very easy to jump in and become busy and do stuff and spend years doing it. But I feel like getting very clear on what is the why behind what you do, right? And when you start asking whys in a sequence, right? You ask why, and then you ask why is that, and then you ask why is that. I think the clarity that you get would put you years ahead of time, right? Because it translates to, okay, why are you picking this customer segment to go after, right? And then when you think about the product backlog, it's like, why are you picking this feature over this feature, right? Why are you hiring this person versus another person? So if the whole decision-making process starts with the why, or let's say 5 of them, that already would set you apart from any other competition, and just make you a happy person in general as well.
I think that's fantastic. Well, Kateryna, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of Fract and of CTO Doctor.
Thanks so much, Noah. Thanks for having me.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
Now Taxes is 100% free when you file in the TurboTax app if you didn't file with us last year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just do your own taxes in the app by 2/18.
What if I have lots of forms?
All good, all 100% free.
What if I had 3 jobs?
Still 100% free.
What if I once saw Bigfoot?
That has nothing to do with taxes, so still 100% free.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
Now this is taxes. See if you qualify in the TurboTax app. Excludes TurboTax Live, must start and file in app by 2/18.